everyone. Welcome to the Northland Artists Conversation. I am your host, Mark Kelly. Thank you very much for tuning in and sticking around with us. It's lovely to have you. Been going now for a little while, and we've had some really amazing guests. Again, just by myself at the moment. Andrew, my co-host, my partner in crime, is unfortunately he's still busy with work and will be for a little while, but he'll be back. I might even get him just sitting in here by himself, just for shits and giggles. But yes, so I hope everyone out there is doing really well. But I tell you what, let's talk about the artist that you're about to listen to or see. Vera Dong. Wow. And I know I say that. I often say the artist's name and then go wow at the end of it. I found Vera to be very interesting, very fascinating. One of the things that we do before each podcast is each of the guests comes inside and sits down with me, and we have a bit of a talk, and gives us a bit of an opportunity to kind of figure out, for me to figure out where they are in terms of like nerves and comfortability and stuff like that. She was amazing. We sat down and we were talking beforehand. She was really open, talked about some different things. We have a first in this podcast. We do something that we've never done before, so you're gonna have to sit down and actually watch or listen to it. Absolutely amazing. It was super cool that she was willing to do what she did as well, so I was really stoked. She talks with a lot of passion about writing. She talks with a lot of passion about where she is in her life at the moment. But she also talked about passion where she was previously and her whole career arc. She was going through the corporate world, absolutely killing it, doing amazing things, and then bit of a left turn, just kind of out of nowhere, really. And and now she lives in between Kirikiri and Kaikoui, and she has just what sounds like an incredibly peaceful life. Busy, but peaceful. She's one of these people that is always learning, always going through self-improvement. Just such a good podcast. It was a real pleasure for me to actually sit down and talk with her and have her in the chair. So without further ado, let's sit down and have a conversation with Vera Dong. And Vera Dong, thank you so much for coming today to the Five Elements Media Studio and joining us for the Northland Artists Conversation.
Oh, my pleasure.
Oh, I believe the pleasure is ours. Thank you very much for joining us.
You're welcome.
It's so lovely to have, I can say this, can't I? An award-winning author?
Oh, no.
I can't, but I'm allowed to because it's true, isn't it? You are an award-winning author. Now, that's quite exciting. We've been very lucky. We've had... you will be our fourth writer. By the time your podcast goes out, we will have had Michael Bota. We will have had Marino Begman, who also does all the communications for this. We will have had Lauren Roche, and now yourself. So you joined some very esteemed company.
Yes, I'm totally out of depth here.
Right.
But I'm, I definitely aspire to be part of, as you said, esteemed writers. I don't really call myself writer. What I do is I just keep writing and keep reading.
Yep.
I don't feel like I deserve that title yet. Maybe one day. Maybe when I really can. I write, I don't know, another 5 years, 10 years. Maybe I will call myself a writer.
Okay.
Of course, that's my aspiration.
Your aspiration. So at this stage, you don't feel you're deserving of the title writer?
Writer.
Okay. Yes. So that I have an interesting question then. Your journey into writing, how because obviously you come from China.
Yes.
So is in China where you sort of started your journey into writing, or did you find writing later on in life? How did you get there, or did you start off with something else creatively?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I did, when I left, I used to work in advertising. And when I started, I was an account servicing person.
That's incredibly creative.
But account servicing means you deal with clients, you deal with people.
Account management, yeah.
Yes, but there is a saying that in advertising, every account servicing person wants to become a strategic planner, and every strategic planner wants to be a creative, a copywriter.
Okay.
So I was account servicing for 6 years, and then I moved on to become a strategic planner.
Wow.
So I was a strategic planner for 9 years, and then I become a consultant on branding.
A brand consultant?
Yes.
That sounds like an awfully fancy title. What exactly is a brand consultant?
Brand consultant, I mean, everything, when you see all the advertising, all channels, but it started with a core of what the brand is. And that's what strategic planners do. So we do ethnographic studies, consumer research. We do all sorts of research and also at the same time looking at the business. Then we have to condense, a pile and pile of information into one page. And then every creative work will have to derive from that one page.
Right, wow.
So I guess maybe in my subconsciousness, I was thinking one day I want to become a copywriter.
Well, yeah, because you've gone from account manager planner to it's like, I now want to be a copywriter.
Yes.
Nice.
So what happened is I left advertising, like 9-5 job in 2006.
Okay, yes.
And when my daughter was just over 1 year old.
Okay.
And so we had a sort of a worldwide trip. And the first step was in Russell. We were in Russell for months.
Yep.
And from day one, I was just absolutely fascinated with everything that's happening, like the early child care. Like when you send your child there, you absolutely not allowed to say a word like what the child should do, what other kids should do, how they should behave. You are not allowed to say a word. If you say a word, you're out.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And so I found this absolutely fascinating. So that's how I started. I said, maybe I can write a column for a newspaper in China about life in Russell or in New Zealand.
Yeah.
Right. And then maybe this trip. So I just contact a friend who work in for a newspaper for Southern China.
Yeah, definitely.
But when I sent my first draft of first story, he said, "Oh my God, that's so bad."
Why bad?
Horrific. Like the structure of the story, the language.
Oh, right.
Oh my God, I realized maybe I'm writing like an advertising person. Right. I mean, completely lost the art of writing a human story. And then he helped me a lot. Then I saw I met up with the editor of that particular page.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
yes.
so he said, "Oh my God, this is a great story. You just need to change this, change that." Then I came out with about 20 stories, and they had a column.
Brilliant.
For 20 weeks.
Wow, okay.
And that was and the title is Shu Fei Travel to the End of the World, the tip of the world.
Tip of the world.
Yes.
Right. What a great title, because that's New Zealand.
Yeah, so I wrote 20 stories.
Yeah.
I think that's how, but then I moved on to photography when I was in Shanghai. So we had a club. I learned photography. We had a group of friends from all walks of life.
Yes.
We even built a little studio, and we worked with local, like underprivileged kids. We taught them photography, the basics of photography.
Wow, very cool.
We run exhibitions for them. So we did that for 5 years in Shanghai.
Brilliant.
And so during that time, my writing sort of, just put it on one side. And so when we came to New Zealand, my husband and 2 kids, in the first few years, it's been really busy. It's all about settling down.
Yeah, definitely.
Right? And then kids were young, so I'm taking them, like we're talking about volunteering in scouts. We're renovating the place. So, and then I think after 2-3 years, I feel like maybe I need to do something.
Right. Okay.
So that's when I went back to writing. So I took creative writing course with Massey University.
That extramurally, yes?
Yes.
Okay. Because Massey's in Palmerston North,
Yes.
right?
So I did a creative writing in general and did poetry. And I learned something that's, amazing, that everybody has a very unique voice. Because,
very much
very
so.
special voice.
Yes.
And I wrote a poem that very, like, dramatic, like, kind of some of the English poetry were like that, like very, like maybe in a sort of old time, right?
Yep.
And I was so proud. And my teacher said, "Why you write like this? That's not your voice."
Oh.
And you should write, you have your
Okay.
own culture. You're
Yep.
coming from somewhere very special. You should find imagery. You should find the language that actually it's you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was probably one of the best advice I've ever received. Sorry, it's a long answer to your question.
That's okay. And we can edit around it too, which is absolutely amazing.
yes.
We can do like a close-up and a wide. It's totally
Yes,
fine.
okay.
But what a great answer. Did you do any writing when you were growing up, when you were at school? Did you have anything creative that you did when you were a kid?
I grew up in 1970s.
Okay, yes.
In 1970s in China, that's still during sort of Cultural Revolution. So our education is quite, there's very little creativity, right? So we do have like, I remember I was always in sort of singing, like choir, or we have to recite some very patriotic poetry.
Okay.
And we have to, but you don't write it. It's all done.
Oh,
show
okay.
you love your country, you love your leader. Everything is perfect. You love people. That's just at that time is kind of a monotone.
Right.
But I did have amazing teachers.
Cool.
We are still in touch. My
that's
Chinese
awesome.
language teacher,
Yes.
my music teacher.
You had a music teacher.
I had an amazing music teacher. She was my music teacher
Yeah.
in kindergarten and then primary school.
Oh, wow.
And a few years ago, I think before COVID, I was home, and I visited her.
Mm-hmm.
Her daughter is my classmate
Yes.
in the same class. So I went visit her. She's already, I think, 82. And first
Wow.
thing she said to me, she said, "Donghua, I'm so sorry." I said, "Why? What are you sorry about? You taught me so much. I remember how beautiful you're still beautiful, but you were absolutely gorgeous."
Yeah.
I remember
Yeah.
this beautiful music teacher. She said, "Oh, you wanted to learn piano, but the school won't let me to teaching you."
Really?
I could not remember. I completely forgot. But she carried on for how many years? 70 years?
Yeah.
60 years. 50 years.
And she still remembered.
Remember, the first time she saw me, she said, I'm sorry.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so funny you say that. I've kind of a similar story myself. I used to do a little bit of choir singing when I was in primary school and stuff like that, and then I kind of discovered musical theatre. And it wasn't until I got to high school, fourth form, where I met the gentleman that would become the drama teacher for Gisborne Boys High School. I'm from Gisborne, and he would go on to be very much a lifelong mentor for me, and I always looked to him with the utmost respect. And if he asked of something, it was always given to the fullest capabilities that I have. And, anytime I do go back to Gisborne, I always make an effort, always, without fail, to go and see him.
Yes, it's wonderful.
And he can still recall, because I'm 47 now, he can recall 30 years ago. Yeah. It's like, Mr. Kelly. It's like, oh, yes, sorry, Mr. McLean. Yeah. And I'm an adult and he's an adult and I don't have to call him by his surname, but, you quickly snap back into that moment. It's like, sorry, sir. It's very funny. You just can't get around of it. Yeah. That is very cool that your teacher...
Well, I guess, there are still art, creativity in even in that very difficult time.
Yeah, definitely. Now, your schooling through China, is it... Are there...
Similar, like primary school, middle school, then senior high school, college. Yep. Yeah.
So you get all your way through senior school, and then is it off to college for you?
Yes, university.
Right, university. And what do you study there?
I studied English literature.
Oh, wow.
I studied English.
Okay.
But that's in 1980s.
Okay,
right. So we had very limited exposure to Western literature. I remember we read Jane Eyre. But it's a simplified version, right? And then we also we are allowed to read the novels that have the right ideology. That fit the mainstream
narrative.
Government. Yes.
Okay.
But I remember, because I was in Beijing. It's a very small school. We were allowed to watch CNN once a week, a short version.
CNN, wow.
Yes, once a week.
Yeah.
On Saturday.
As someone, so I've only ever lived in New Zealand. I've actually never travelled outside of New Zealand. So culturally, I'm probably, I wouldn't say ignorant or stunted, but I'm very unaware. So I love learning about different cultures, and that's one of the reasons I love sitting with different people in the chair, because everyone's story is so fascinating. We've had people who have come over from England, or people that have kind of travelled around the world and just ended up in New Zealand, and it's like, this is fascinating. I can say that I've been to every town in New Zealand of a population of 3,000 or more. Not many Kiwis can say that, so I guess I'm quite proud. So you're in... Sorry, I digress. You're in university and you're studying pre-approved texts for English Lit.
Yes.
And you obviously do quite well at it, because you sort of... Where do you start your career off once you graduate?
Interesting. I actually worked for a culture exchange sort of center. Okay. What I when I just started the job is kind of organizing a Western artist to come to China for exhibitions.
Oh, right.
Or concert.
Yes.
So I used to translate. I remember a Canadian conductor. So he came and he worked with the Beijing Opera Symphony.
Right.
So I just did translation for the conductor and looked after him and his wife. Right. And another thing I always do is, after the concert, I just go and present a bouquet of flowers.
Oh, wow.
On stage.
So you're really, if we look at it, you're in the arts for quite a good chunk of it.
As more like
on the periphery.
Yeah, like as a service person.
Yes. Yeah, you're not the artist as such, but you're engaging with artistic people all around. Yes. Wow, that's fascinating. So you've been on the periphery of arts for
many years.
Many
time.
Years. Wow, very
time.
Cool.
I guess I never had any even thinking that I can be an artist. Never thought of it. It's, I don't know why.
Well,
interesting.
Because you're in the arts doesn't necessarily mean you have to create.
Yeah, but I guess I could have tried.
You could have
earlier.
Why didn't you?
Yeah, I didn't. I guess at that time absolute priority is to become independent.
Right.
Become especially financially independent.
Right. Yeah.
So I can look after my parents. I don't need them to support me.
Yeah.
And so thinking about art or being an artist or creative, almost like really that's a luxury.
Right. Okay.
I guess is, I think about it now like it is a luxury and it's a privilege.
Very much so, yeah. I'm, as someone who sits in this chair and talks with a different range of artists, I work a 9-to-5 job, and I do this as my passion. And everyone that's involved in the Northland Artists Conversation, 80% of us all have a 9-to-5 job.
Yes.
So if you're one of the lucky few that doesn't need to work and can dedicate full time to a creativity, I tip my hat out of respect.
Thank you.
Because that's a huge commitment.
I mean, I used to work 12, 15 hours a day for 15 years.
Yes.
That's, serious work.
That's not easy.
Yeah, but I enjoyed it. I don't know. I guess that's I'm very lucky to. A friend of mine used to say, "Oh, whoever hire you, they're lucky because you just fall in love. You just fall in love with everything that sort of drop in front of you.
Yeah,
a job or a project, assignment. You just, I think I don't know. I'm just so lucky. And now I decided to do writing, and I dedicate every second I have. Beyond looking after family, looking after, all the things I need to do, that every second I'm reading books, analysis. If I read a poem, I read 10 times, 20 times. I'll read other people's analysis. I will copy it, read it out loud. I just love it. The only problem is I don't have enough time.
Don't have enough time.
Yes.
You used to work 12 to 15 hours,
Yes.
and now you don't have enough time for writing. That's hilarious. What style of writer are you? When we've sat down with other writers in the past, some have talked about having to be disciplined and sitting down and making time to write. Some have talked about, I'll write when the inspiration comes to me. Do you find that you lean more to the discipline or the free-flowing creativity, or do you sort of find yourself somewhere in the middle?
I don't know. I really haven't thought about. I think what writing has brought me, it's absolutely like a magical experience, because I started with a Bay of Islands writing group. So we had a 5-6 people. And, Vivian Thonga, she's the writer, she's the leader, and she's incredibly inspiring. And we will have a word for every month, at random. You just pick a book, you pick a page, you pick a word. Right. So that's the prompt for the month. And I was just sitting there with this word, or I'll just have this word in my head for a week. Yeah. And it was I don't understand how that happens, that every single word, no matter how randomly is picked, those words could drive me into my childhood, into my family, my grandmother, my mother, my childhood, my cousins, my brother, the experience we had, that I normally too busy to ever think about those, right? But doesn't matter what the word is. It draws me back to those times. And I will relive those experiences. It's like I go back to it. I start to look every single detail that I didn't, even when I was in it, I didn't know. But now I'm going back like a movie. I'm going back. Suddenly the experience intensified. Yeah. Right. And so if you ask me what's the experience, just you give me a word and the story is already there. Wow. And then all I need is to find a time, sitting down, write it, and write a really bad first draft.
Okay, right, yeah.
Bad, wrong grammar, wrong words, wrong structure.
Yeah.
Everything wrong. Wrong beginning, wrong title, wrong ending.
Yeah.
Right. But then you start to just, like a rough stone. You carve it. You smooth, you sand it, and then it become a nice story. But the essence of it is there. It's already there. So I'm not writing this is kind of often my story is like a creative nonfiction.
Okay.
Because
right.
it's there is there part of it happened, but lots of other details may not have happened, right? But it's always started from something real, something I know or something I experienced. Yeah, but I found like in that way, the writing is not just the writing, like, oh, you publish, you got some, you win some prize, but it's like, I feel like my life suddenly become much richer. The way I look my past, like the way I look for example, my countryside relatives.
Yes.
Because I become cosmopolitan, I worked around the world, international companies. And I feel like, for example, for one period of time, I feel like I'm totally ignorant.
Right.
And because of that ignorance, I become arrogant, right?
Oh, okay.
So I become kind of arrogant to my family, like relatives who hasn't had the privilege to have all the education, all the sophistication. And through writing, I discovered that. And I couldn't believe how, I feel so sad. I was so upset with myself.
Yeah, yeah.
Because often the things you have done or the expressions or the things you said out of that ignorance and arrogance hurt people. And then, some of them, there's no way back.
So you've lived a very cosmopolitan lifestyle, and you've obviously been very fortunate enough to live all around the world. And then you elect to pick New Zealand. What was the change in your life that made you go from, you know what, I don't really want to work 15 hours a day anymore. I want to be stay-at-home mum, and start growing personally. Where was that shift? What was that shift? What inspired it?
I think it definitely is my daughter, Shu Fei.
It's a lovely name.
My first child.
It's a very cool name.
Yeah, first child. And I love little kids. Even when I was just 10, or when I'm just a child. I had lots of much older cousins, so they had the little kids. My mom used to say, oh, you could just drop your pen, even you just haven't finished, you miss one stroke to finish one Chinese character.
Yeah.
You would just drop the pen if you saw a little kid. You would just
Really?
run to the little kid and play with them.
Yeah.
So I guess I always loved little kids. So when Shufei was over 1, I said maybe I'd take a long holiday.
Yeah.
And see how it goes.
And you're still on that holiday.
I guess. But and I guess that's the reason, I sort of, but then I really did not want to come to New Zealand. It's actually my husband's decision.
Okay. Right.
And he said it's good for kids. And
It's great for kids.
Yeah, it's great I love New Zealand, but I was not sure about living here.
Okay, right.
But I think it's good for kids, right? I said, okay, I will come. And I promised myself, I promised kids, I promised my husband that I will embrace everything.
Yeah.
No matter how I feel, I will embrace everything like a local person.
Right.
So that's how I did it. So kids, day one, when we arrived, I get them registered with the local drama school.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, instantly. They're in the drama class.
Okay.
Then in football, swimming. But sometimes I remember driving, I see this amazing view, sunny, the typical, far Northland weather.
Oh, yeah.
Beautiful, amazing
Gorgeous.
sun, the landscape, everything. I said, oh my God, this is beautiful.
Yeah.
But it's irrelevant to me. I don't feel it. I in my head say, oh, this is beautiful.
Yeah.
But I can't feel it. But it's not like I force myself not to feel it. It's just the living in the city, there's a momentum. Like my body, my mind has a momentum that I can't stop that momentum.
Yeah.
Right. But that took quite a long time. And at the beginning, you know, I in my interview with the National Flash Fiction Day competition, you know, I would say when I first came, I have to deal with my identity crisis. You know, I was in mid-40s.
Yep.
And naturally, like living a kind of a glamorous job. And in my advertising career, almost I was in the sort of a point of making big breakthrough.
Yeah.
Right. That's when I stopped.
Just before you kind of crossed into that next level.
Yes.
Yeah.
I stopped.
Yep.
Right. And I see my colleagues or people who used to report with me become a CEO, become managing director.
Yeah, okay.
Right? So sometimes I do feel, I did feel a sense of lost.
Right.
Right. I did feel a sense of like resentment.
Okay.
And because of the kids, because of my husband. But now I think, especially after I start to write, I start to really get in touch with, you know, who I am, what I want, and what this, you know, outside world expectation, how that affect me. And I'm very aware of all these feelings.
Yeah, sure.
And now I can not be happier to be here,
to
be in Kirikiri, and to be in Waimate North. You know, have this. That to me, that is the absolute real luxury. That is the real luxury, to be able to live among woods.
It is.
And
absolutely.
flowers, and you know, I feel like, oh my God, I can't be more grateful for my husband's decision.
Yeah.
But that took a bit time.
Yeah, and obviously, you know, I lived in Auckland for 7 years, and I moved to Auckland for my career as well. And big cities kind of have their own heartbeat. You know, they have a pulse and a rhythm to them that, you know, when you sort of leave a big city, if you've been there for long enough, you're like, all right, now what? What do I do? I don't know how to slow down. I need to find stuff and do stuff, and I need to keep that pulse and that momentum going. And it can take a little while to ease off the brakes.
Yeah. I guess it's what happened to me maybe slightly different is I still have the same drive, right? You know, it actually doesn't matter where I am, what I'm doing. I always have that drive.
Nice.
But now I think, you know, my world is actually much bigger, much wider, and has more layers, have more depths than just the advertising world.
Right.
So I am so happy I left.
Yeah.
You know, when I for 3 years, I was really upset I left. But now I'm so happy.
How long have you been in New Zealand now?
9 years.
9 years?
Yes.
Amazing.
So now I think I made that transition. And another thing that what the writing brought to me, you know, make me realize is actually my dad is he has green fingers. He used to nurture flowers. And my grandfather is very good fruit trees.
Oh, wow.
And my mom is very good growing vegetables. Right. And now I have all that in my property. And I think that my childhood and my grandparents and my parents, their experience now, I'm experiencing their experience.
Yes.
Right. And I feel this connection between my childhood in China, my visit of countryside when I was young, and now my life here. Suddenly it's like a complete loop.
It's a circle of life.
Yeah. But it's cross culture, it's cross time and cross generations. But it's actually now somehow it met in where I live. And I find that's amazing. That's also what sort of writing helped me to realize, to see that, you know, from that perspective.
And isn't it interesting that you were in that corporate lifestyle for so long, and then you stepped away from it, and now you're living how you're you remember your parents
Yes.
and your grandparents.
Yes.
Had you not stepped away,
I won't.
I was going to say,
Yes.
would that have happened?
Yeah, no. And if I haven't picked up writing and make effort, I wouldn't have the chance to actually go really deep into my own life, my memories, my childhood, all the family members, that played an important role in my life.
Yeah.
So I think I'm just absolutely lucky.
You're incredibly blessed.
Yes, I'm very blessed.
What a great revelation to have too. And you're in that position and time in your life now where you're able to focus on your writing. Your kids are becoming a little bit more self-sufficient. We talked about that before.
Yes.
Not needing their mum as they may have in the past. And that who knows what that free time will afford you the luxury of being able to do. When the kids grow up, and what do? Do they stay and work, or do they go to university? Whatever they choose to do, what does that extra free time evolve into for you? Does that throw you deeper down the writing hole? Do you go back to photography? Who knows?
I definitely would just focus on writing.
I
have problem. I so easy to suddenly, I do something like on photography. I think I've done quite good level.
Yeah.
And I just completely dropped it. But now on writing, I'm absolutely dedicated the rest of my life.
Nice.
Because that's like you read one writer.
Yeah.
About, even just a novel or short story. It's like a door. You enter a door,
yes.
right?
Yes.
Then you read more, there's more doors open. And then you open those doors, there's windows open.
Yeah.
That is only one writer. If you love, at the moment you're reading 5 writers, that's 5 doors. And inside the 5 doors, another 50 doors.
Yeah, so many options.
And so much to learn.
Yeah.
You never have enough time.
No, you don't. And we're always learning too.
Yes.
Always learning, always growing.
Absolutely.
And you've been very kind today. You've brought in a book. And now I'm going to see if I can get this right. This is called Aotearoa Tatou.
Yes. We Are New Zealand.
We Are New Zealand, and this is this a new book?
This is it's an anthology.
Yes.
Edited by Michelle Elvey, Paula Morris, and James Northcliffe. Art editor David Eggleton. He was the last poet laureate for New Zealand.
Oh wow! Wow.
David Eggleton. Michelle Elvey. Absolute superwoman.
Yeah.
And she teaches writing. She's a writer herself, and this is a book commemorate all the people who lost their life in Christchurch massacre. So
wow.
So this is anthology.
Did not know that.
Yeah, it's contributed. The contributors are from all over New Zealand, from all
Right.
walks of life, from all cultures.
Yes.
So I just have a little piece, a little poem. It's collected by this collection.
Oh, it's
an
like
anthology.
curated works. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And I have a little poem.
I know.
About my chicken.
No, you've just dropped your glasses, so I'm going to reach forward and grab those for you.
I
Hang on a second.
I probably can read it. It's bright.
It's very bright in here.
Yes.
Now, for those of you watching or listening, this is a bit of a first for us. We've not had anyone sort of, for the writers sort of do any writing or reading, the musicians do any singing. So we're about to have a live, well, live in the sense that she's just going to do it on the fly, reading of the poem from Vera Dong. Vera, what is the poem called?
It's called 13 Ways of Looking at a Chicken. Or hen. 13
Ways of Looking at a Hen.
Yeah.
This is going to be fascinating. Please, whenever you're ready.
Okay. This is inspired by 13 Ways of Looking at a Blackbird by Wallace Stevens.
Okay.
1. Among giant puriri trees, the only wandering thing is a blob of a golden hen, molting. 2. Is a hen's vision the same when looking through the wormhole of a scented kawakawa leaf? 3. Subsistence, a man, toast burned, coffee dark roasted. A hen, seeds light roasted, oats rolled. 3. A man, a hen are one. A man, a hen, a boy are one. A man, a hen, a boy, a girl are one or not. 4. I don't know which one is more charming, a hen's rhythmic strides or her musical mating invitations. 5. A golden hen sits under a golden canopy, a red maple tree, while her eggs taste sweet or spicy. 6. Can a hen pass on her broodiness? I find myself sitting down in bushes, seems for a lifetime, imagining a fleet of my own plump cooing babies. 7. Swallows are migrating to the south. A hen tries her wings. 8. Dark, wet mulch. Worms look up, a shadow of a giant approaching, and here it's tiptoeing too. 9. She dreams of going home to see her fragile mother. Her hen goes along, presenting the old lady with a golden egg. 10. A lady and a hen can see each other from their bedrooms, one with floral wallpaper, one under a canopy of bloom of rosemary. 11. A gardener and a hen play hide and seek, their favorite pastime. 12. When a hen stops eating, I wish I had fed her nothing but her favorite fresh sunflower seeds. 13. On the Mid-Autumn Festival, a hen is out about, mistaken a full moon for a tiny sun. She staggers towards the hen house at dawn, like she's hypnotized by the air, impregnated by osmanthus golden fragrance.
Well, I'm going to... Round of applause, Rocky. Thoughts? Yep, round of applause from Rocky as well. They're very nice.
Yeah.
I certainly sat there going, yeah, brooding, definitely. That's very cool.
The reason I want to read this is because I feel this is showing my, transition.
Yeah.
I've done the transition, how I love the property, the woods, and they're really like a little, magic place in Kirikiri.
It definitely sounds it. Yeah. And Waimate North is a beautiful, beautiful place.
Yes.
Very sleepy, very quiet,
yes,
and
yes.
It literally is between. Is it Kirikiri or Waipapa? That's in between them.
Yes, it's on the from Waipapa.
There you go.
Yes.
Yeah. Driven through there a few times for work.
Yes.
Oh, so peaceful.
Yes.
Peaceful.
But the local life is it's full of life.
Yeah.
The landscape is open and quiet and peaceful. Tranquility, you can feel it. But the people living there, they are all busy. They all have some very engaging life.
It's one of those places where, it looks peaceful and quiet, but there's a lot going on.
Yes.
Now, that you said that poem was inspired by 13 Blackbirds.
13 Ways of Looking at
Blackbirds. And that was written by another...
This is it's an absolute genius poet, but it's a modernism. It's not like a sort of classic, like a sonnet.
Right.
Like this is a modern... it's somebody said, oh, this is like a just 13 Chinese poems or 13 Chinese painting.
Oh, okay.
Like kind of abstract.
Yeah.
They're just simple.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that piece obviously quite important to you.
Yeah, I love modern poetry. I actually studied the history of American modern poetry.
Yeah.
I love, just like modern painting. modern painting is up to personal interpretation.
Absolutely.
And then modern poetries have that. It's similar.
So if you're a fan of modern artists, who are your inspirations then? Who inspires you? Who has inspired you? Who continues to inspire you?
Yes. In terms writing, I mean, I write flash stories, right? It's short stories. But I love all I love, I think, I don't know who, but almost everybody I love reading is huge inspiration.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, these are just coming, it's all inside me, in my head. I can't really pinpoint, who's the most inspiring, right? They're all amazing. I think they influence me in a very different way. Like, I love Catherine Mansfield.
Oh, yes.
I actually, how I got introduced to her was amazing. I saw her collection is actually the every single short story she ever wrote.
Oh, wow.
In that collection.
Yeah.
Very thick, $1 from Hospice.
Really?
So I got that before COVID first lockdown.
Yep, the big one.
Yeah, the big one. So during the lockdown, that's what I did. Every day I read her story.
Amazing.
I could not believe, from the first story, I could not go beyond first page because the first page was so well written.
Yeah.
I just keep going back to first paragraph, second paragraph, third paragraph.
Wow.
I just highlight. I just read it again. I just say, oh my God, it absolutely engaged you.
Yeah.
And then I become quite obsessed with everything about Catherine Mansfield.
Okay.
So I went to Wellington. I went to the house she grew up.
Oh, wow.
I read her letters.
You really got in deep.
Yeah, I just love, and I read her poetry. Her poetry is actually quite simple. There's nothing, and her stories are all extremely human. Just human little things. She has such an eye for such a observer.
Yep, she's an observer of life and things.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
So I love. I also. I love William Faulkner.
Okay.
And
yes.
I found him. Again, it's the same thing. Like the first paragraph set the scene.
Yeah.
It's you instantly drawn into it.
Yeah.
And the way there's a rule like you don't use adjectives. Right, you shouldn't use adjectives in your story. You always use verb. Right, but he used adjectives all the time, but absolutely perfect. There's absolutely perfect the way he used adjectives.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Why aren't you meant to use adjectives?
Like, you don't use adjective to describe a personality. You don't just say, oh, his clothes is like how to say, like old or broken. You don't use these words.
Okay.
You say, oh, he's wearing something like he's been wearing it for in the past 100 years.
Right. Okay.
Right.
Yep.
So you let the readers to imagine. Oh, if somebody wear clothes for 100 years, how would that clothes look like?
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
You don't just go, oh, it's gray, it's dirty, it's broken, it's this, that.
Yeah.
But the way I can't give example, like he will just, I don't know, he will use these words. When he describes somebody, I guess he already presented the character in such a incredible way.
Yeah.
Then he can use a few adjectives. It doesn't matter. Yeah, I mean, every single writer is incredible.
They are. And also so unique as well. I mean, William Faulkner is very different from Catherine Mansfield.
Yeah. I mean, New Zealand life, another one is southern, Mississippi.
Yeah.
But the good story is the good story.
Yes.
They always have same reasons for being amazing story. But I also love story, with a history backdrop.
Okay.
I think I'm also always interested in history. Like I'm at the moment listening to a Chinese writer's novel, and that happened in 1950s and 60s.
Oh wow.
That was the quite difficult time.
And I imagine that would be quite interesting from your perspective because that's not too far from when you were born,
yeah,
or
yeah.
when you
so
started going through your life. Yeah.
My parents, my grandparents still have
Yeah.
memories of those
Yeah.
time, and so naturally I feel very connected to that. And there's a Chinese novelist called Mo Yan, and he actually won the Nobel Prize on Literature in 2012.
Oh, wow. Wow.
He's again, it's incredibly creative. Most of his stories are also happen. There's the real history backdrop.
Right, yeah.
I think that really add lots of depth to the story. And at the moment, I feel like my story, it's personal. It's a slice of life.
Yes.
I hope that in the future my story will have a little bit depth of history.
Sure.
And how that affected each character.
Northland Artists Conversation are incredibly proud to support the Quarry Arts Centre. Quarry Arts Centre, amazing place, located on Selwyn Ave in Whangarei. Such a wonderfully beautiful venue. They are an art gallery, and they have some amazing exhibitions, and they also hold Te Kōwhai Print Trust as well. Another really, really cool artistic endeavour that's done as well. They will have different exhibitions and shows of all different types of medium available as well, and they're such a long-standing venue in the community as well. Highly recommend you checking them out. Fantastic place. Really, really cool to take the kids and family as well. So, Northland Artists Conversation, proud to support the Quarry Arts Centre. For me and the people that watch and listen to this podcast, we always like have a little bit at the end where we sort of talk about what you as the artist have got going on and what's coming up for you. And we send out these little pre-interview questionnaires in advance, and you've put here that you're part of the Ngārepo Wai Swirling Waters, which is a Kirikiri Anthology this time around.
Yes.
Tell me, and the people that are watching and listening, tell us a little bit about that.
Well, Kirikiri is really a magic place.
Agreed.
It has amazing history.
Makana is phenomenal.
Yes.
But there's more to Kirikiri than Makana.
Yeah.
There is.
Yeah, Kathy and Jack Jenkins, they are two sisters, and they built this Pavlova press. So they published their own books, and they published their poetry collection, story collection, and they just spent unbelievable hours and time to put this together. It's called Swirling Water.
Yes.
Kirikiri Anthology. So again, that has poetry, little stories, actually including like a news report for about the flood in Wapapa Landing.
Yes.
So it's an incredibly rich book, and many local contributors. So I wrote a little letter. Basically, it's about a father who's already here.
Okay.
And he's trying to convince his wife and child to come to live with him in Kirikiri. So that's a little letter that he wrote. And then there's a story that's real history. The Kirikiri had a... So that's how I found that. The way I found it was interesting. When I first came, I went to Stone Store.
Yes.
With the family, and we sit on a little bench and notice a piece of stone at the back of the bench. And on top of the stone is said something, this is dedicated to Edward Selby Little.
Okay.
A white bracket, white Chinese. And I was like, what is that? White Chinese? I never heard this term.
No, I've never heard
of
that either.
So I went back and checked the name, checked the expression, and actually end up Edward Selby Little is one of the founding fathers of Kirikiri, who spent 40 years in China before he came here.
Wow.
In 1928, right? So there's actually at
Wow.
that time there's a big group of Europeans
Yes.
who already made their life and business success in China.
Yes.
Then come over here to Kirikiri, and they built the first hydropower station. They experimented with fruit and fruit juice, including passion fruit juice, or
Wow.
like tamarillos.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So they done a lot. They set up the the sort of foundations. And then the Cathay Cinema, it's called Cathay Cinema because Cathay means Chinese.
Really?
Yes, and we have a Cathay Cinema, exactly same name.
Yes.
In the main street of Shanghai, called Cathay Cinema.
Wow.
Yeah. So this, I found the connection is incredible, right?
That's amazing.
Yeah, and my personal experience of how I found my roots in Kirikiri.
Yes.
Right, how I connect my life with my childhood. My life here, connect my my childhood and my parents, my grandparents.
Yeah.
So I wrote just a little letter. So that's also in that anthology. But that's that. I'm sorry, I didn't. I lent it
that's
to
okay.
a friend.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a absolutely gorgeous cover.
Where can people find this?
You can go to Pavlova Press.
Like Pavlova, as in Kiwi Pavlova.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
The most famous,
Most-
controversial.
Yes. Made
dessert.
by Kiwis, stolen
Or
by Australians. Yeah.
Yes. So you go to Pavlova Press, and
Yeah.
I believe in Fish Pond.
Yes.
That
Yes.
I
The
believe
website.
that.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's absolutely gorgeous book.
I'm not from Northland. I moved up here, it'll be 7 years ago in November, and I had lived all around the North Island. But when I moved here, I felt like I'd moved to a larger version of Gisborne, because that's where I'm from. And as I've lived here over the years, I've started to grow out and expand more, and I've always found these really little interesting things along the way, and if there's books, I will always try and get them, because I like learning a little bit about the history of where I've been. And there's been some absolutely fascinating books that have come out of Northland as a whole, about the different little segments. So yeah, that's one I'll be definitely looking at. I didn't even know about it, to be honest.
Yeah. There's so many, like I think Whangarei also have many very talented
absolutely.
poets, writers, actors. It's like amazing. The whole, the funnels is I don't know. I think it's like waiting to be discovered.
I would 100% agree with that. And we've been very fortunate enough to have some amazing artists on, and we've got some amazing artists that are coming up and are due to sit in the chair as well. Whether it be actors or world famous musicians, people that you go, you know what, I know this person. I would have never have picked that they live in outside of Kaitaia or over in Dargaville. And there's just all these neat little pockets, and they've had a career, been incredibly successful, and then have moved out of the big hustle and bustle, and they've wanted to slow down their lives a little bit and reconnect. And we have a massive depth of talent in Northland that some of it is completely undiscovered.
Yes.
Undiscovered, and being able to put a feature on artists, both established and upcoming, is incredibly important.
Hope so.
Yourself.
Thank you.
Because it really is a blessing. And from someone who has very much an outsider's perspective, to be able to sit down with people and engage in these wonderful conversations and talk about background and history and influences and things that have happened in your life, and really learn. For me, that's incredibly important. And the people that watch and listen to these podcasts also are exactly the same. We get a lot of good positive feedback, which is very nice. So I have a very important question to ask you. You've been part of the anthology, the Ko Aotearoa Tātou. You've been part of the anthology for Anaripo Wai Swirling Waters. When does the Vera Dong book come out?
I know. I have a writer friend, Kim Martin, and she's self-published so many books. She's a historian, and she's a lawyer. She's just incredible. She keep asking the same question, and she keep asking where, when.
Yeah. Why not?
Because she was in the Bay of Islands writing group, and she loved so many of my stories, little story. Even, it, of course, it has to be edited and rewrite and restructured. But she liked the essence of the story.
Nice.
And
very cool.
I guess I don't know. I feel like I need at least a few years to become a better writer. I really have to keep at the craft.
Yes.
I have to read and write and keep editing and going back to the stories I wrote before and poems I wrote before, and to really, after I read a lot, I learn a lot, go back to them.
Yeah.
And hopefully turn them into more interesting stories. I probably have enough stories to be a little collection, but they are all not good enough yet.
I thought you were about to say, I'm going to publish a book of short stories about it. You've heard it first here.
Yeah, I found the craft is absolutely important. You craft every word, every sentence, even punctuation. It's an art. It's important. It's part of story.
It is.
The space, the title, how it ends. This every time, like the story. The Golden Phoenix and Grey Hen, that's the story won the top prize.
Okay, yes.
Even the 10 minutes before I submitted, I still made a major change.
10 minutes before?
10 minutes before I submitted, I was still changing words. And I feel like, and this is only 300 words. So every word counts.
Yeah.
Right? So I will look at so even that, I said, and that sentence, I remember I was describing my garden.
Okay.
Right.
Yep.
I was describing based on the season, based on all my knowledge of flowers. But I said that's enough about flowers. Why do I need to have so many? The garden actually was much more alive, also with birds, with chicken, with all that.
Yeah.
But I said I just get rid of one sentence on flower, and I added sparrows. The fidgeting sparrows waiting to have their share of the chook food.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, that paragraph immediately become alive.
It does.
Right.
Fidgeting sparrows, you can almost picture that in your head.
Yeah, they are like all the time. That's the way they act.
Absolutely.
So that's literally 10 minutes before I submit. So every story you can never be good in. They can always be better, always. So I need to spend at least maybe another 5 years to really work on the craft. And English is my second language, and sometimes I still I don't want people to feel this is written by somebody whose English is second language. I want the people to feel this is a proper English language.
Yeah.
Only the story. It has some Chinese element or is a Chinese story.
I'm with you. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think I do not want people to kind of, it's just, I know because it's written by the person who speaks the language, not the perfect. So it's okay. I'm forgiving.
Right.
I'm forgiving her. I don't need that forgivingness.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think I need to work on.
Okay. 5 years. That'll go by pretty quick.
Pretty quick.
Hard to believe that 2.5 years ago, we hadn't even entered our first lockdown. So time does go by pretty quickly.
Very fast. And if you want to read a book, I don't just read a book.
Yep.
I study book.
Yeah.
I study it. I absorb it. I wish I wish it become part of me.
Yeah.
Right. And so that takes time. Like a page, you could spend a day just going through that page, paragraph, and thinking why it's so brilliant. Right. And So 5 years is very little time.
It is. It'll go by pretty fast. Yes. And then we'll get you back in to promote your book. That will be awesome.
Oh my God, I look forward to that.
That'll be amazing. Look, Vera, thank you so much for coming in and sitting down with me. I genuinely appreciate it. It's lovely to learn about you, about your journey, and everything that you've done. It's such an honour to have people like yourself come in and just give so freely. So from myself and the team from Northland Artists Conversation, thank you very much.
Thank you for the opportunity.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Have a good evening. Cheers.
The lovely Mrs. Vera Dong. Wow. Yeah. You know, I said this at the intro of the podcast, is that we were going to have a first, and the fact that she was willing to actually read one of her poems actually in the middle of the whole conversation, absolutely brilliant, unbelievable, and I can't believe we haven't had anyone do it before. So good. It was one of those, and it's really funny how that came about. We were just sitting inside talking beforehand, talking about, because she thought it might have been like a bit of an interview, like, do you have set questions? And I was like, well, no, we don't have set questions. I'm going to ask a question, you're going to answer it, and then I'm going to ask the next question based off the answer you've just given me. And she sort of said, well, I've brought some of my poetry, and I was like, oh, cool. How would you feel about reading it? She goes, oh, I don't know. And I was like, well, we'll see. Let's just see how it goes. And sure enough, we're talking about the book called Aotearoa Toto, and she talks a bit about that. And then she's like, and I bought a poem, and I'm like, oh, cool. All right, let's adjust the microphone. Here we go. And it's so good, so cool, super cool. Such a good poem, and it really led nicely on to her talking about her influences, and it was a really lovely piece. So if you did manage to get all the way through, hope you enjoyed it. I found it absolutely fascinating and super cool as well. So you will be, well, by this stage, you've probably seen a few of our podcasts or heard of a few of our podcasts, but if this is your first time, thank you very much for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. So this is the part that Andrew would normally do. I'm going to do my best to get it right this time. So for the visuals, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Northland Artists Conversation, going that way. On the audio, you can hear us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts at Northland Artists Conversation, somewhere in there. And if you're an artist and we haven't heard about you, we would love to have you come in and sit down. And you can contact us by simply emailing hello@northlandartistsconversation.co.nz. We've got a wonderful lady, Marino Begman. She does all of the communication. She is absolutely phenomenal at her job. She is very, very good. I say this a lot, but I'm incredibly blessed to have such an amazing team of people working that do this. I've got Rocky Steventon, who is an amazing editor and has been with us since last year. I think it's last year, as we were going through all the trials. Andrew McKenzie, who has been with me on this journey right from the word go. Amazing to have his support. And our social media giant, the lady of many, many posts, Catherine Tasker, so good, so amazing at what she does. I am simply one man. I may be the guy in front of the camera, but none of this would happen without them. So big shout out to them. So if you like what you see or hear and you want to support us a little bit more, we also have a Patreon page. Now, what that is that's a way for you to give a little bit back to the podcast and make sure that we're able to keep going as well. There's a lot of costs involved. So we've set up 2 tiers. So the first tier I've called a cup of coffee, and that's $5 a month. And that's just a way of saying, hey, look, we really support you. Thanks very much. That's awesome. Second tier we have is what I've affectionately called a coffee addict, and that is $20 a month. And that gives you a couple of little extra perks as there. We're looking at doing some shout outs as well for people that go to that, so a little bit of recognition as well. So super cool. And where you can find us is northlandartists.com. Sorry, I'll start that again. Man, I've said it enough times and I got it wrong. Patreon.com/Northland Artists Conversation. Absolutely amazing and super cool. I know that we have had a few technical issues. I'm still currently working through them with the Patreon people. Apparently it's a bit of a known issue, but we are trying to get there. So please make sure you keep checking it out. Again, as I said, if you do love what we do, please make sure you support what that does. It helps us continue to grow and continue to keep going as well. We've got a few weeks coming up. It's going to be good times. Really looking forward to it. We've got some really cool artists coming up. Couple of big names as well that we've been working on very quietly in the background. And we're looking at getting them across the line as well. So make sure you stick around. So I'm going to throw to the wide camera. My name is Mark Kelly. Normally in the chair is Andrew McKenzie. So from the both of us and the entire Northland Artists Conversation team, thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll see you guys real soon.